So, yeah, so good morning, good evening to everyone. Greetings from Malaysia. I've been here a few days now. And, still in the quarantine period, mandatory quarantine. So anyway, at first I wasn't sure if the internet is stable enough. It's still a little unstable, the internet here. So if we get cut off, I will try to come back on. Then if that happens, then you know what's going on. Anyway, we will begin with the usual opening recitations. All Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhi, all Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi, all Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. Thus, until I achieve Buddha, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. The Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent. I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. May all Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness, and the causes of happiness, may they be liberated from suffering, and the causes of suffering, may they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness, and the causes of happiness, may they be liberated from suffering, and the causes of suffering, may they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness, and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. Then the seven branch worship. If you have it in the other languages, then you can go ahead and do this now. In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times before each of you, lions among humans. I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. By the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, all conquerors appear vividly in my mind with as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands. I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom abundance, numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the airs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors. In this way, with infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies, I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors and praise all of you gone to bliss with the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps and superior incense I offer to you conquerors with excellent garments and best fragrances and sandalwood powder. Heap high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings perfectly arranged. I offer to you conquerors these vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you conquerors with the power of conviction in noble deeds. I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors all the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance. I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions and the heirs of the Buddha, solitary realizers, hearers still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings, you who are lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. All you who are my protectors, please turn the unexcelled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings, whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching. I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain for continent, sun and moon, I hold in mind as a Buddha land and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure land. The Gurus who possess the 3 kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings with my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence. please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment, whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate it all to complete Bodhi. Om Guru Devada Kinirana Mandala Pratijasho. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater and lesser common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Dulce Chanjatile Naroda Mamita Potakuji Neko Katun Sudan Savela Mesha Sanju Namagitan Chogi Masola Sota Jeje Kya Gagito Mesame Geta Peto Songa Sumegava Doje Chamba Jine Kumbashala Tulu Tatu Sangi Kya Chichila Shitu Jiji Neke Mesa Neke Zenda Neke Jiji Emma Gesa Tombola Yasan Chogi Guru Pemas Senju Gongon Sunto Zavela Meshana. So we now continue with chapter 9, the chapter on wisdom, Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara. So we are in this section now, which all the traditional commentaries help identify this section as Shantideva debating what is known as followers of the Chittamatra, or the mind-only philosophical system. That being one of the four philosophical systems that the Nalanda tradition says that, you know, the complete diversity of different Buddhist philosophical positions can be summarized into these four, and Chittamatra is supposed to be the third of the fourth. And these arrangement of the four, there is a progression of profundity of views, as we have briefly looked at. And so here, all the traditional commentaries will tell us that Shantideva is basically responding to the third group, the Chittamatra, or the mind-only views. As I have said, you know, we are not going to go through chapter 9. using that more scholarly academic way that traditionally this chapter is taught and learned in the Tibetan system. We're not going to go in that direction. Firstly, I don't think I am educated enough to do justice to the complexity of these arguments that the traditional commentaries are able to bring out. And also there's no point then, for me to just, look at the commentary and read to you what they're saying. You can do that yourself. Instead, what I will try to do is to help myself kind of look at this and say, how is what is being said here might be offering me guidance in avoiding faults of the problems of certain misunderstandings about the nature of reality, the nature of our minds. And how by avoiding the problems that Shantideva identifies, it will have direct implication on our practice. So in that context, this section where he debates and refutes certain Chittamatra views becomes particularly relevant, especially for those of us who are practicing or are exposed to, at least, to the Kagyu Mahamudra system of training. Because in the Kagyu Mahamudra system, especially as taught by Gampopa and Gampopa's disciples, grand disciples, successors, the expressions and language used are often drawn from the Chittamatra tradition. They share similar vocabulary, similar expressions, and so what Shantideva points out to be false is something that we also need to be on the lookout for. For example, in this section that we've looked at so far, right, if you remember, if you recall, the subject is on like, is this mind, right? Is this mind real? In fact, of course, we know Shantideva is saying, hold on, don't talk of mind, don't think of mind as that thing that is ultimately real as that thing that can stand in and of itself. Because everything, including mind, is empty of inherent existence. Therefore, everything, including mind, cannot be asserted, cannot be thought of, cannot be related to as self-existing, and something that doesn't exist based on the principle of interdependence. So Shantideva is warning us. All the things that he refutes, all the different ways he refutes in this section is basically warning us not to relate to mind as real. So for that matter, I would say, not just the Kagyu Mahamudra tradition. So if you follow the Nyingma Dzogchen tradition, or the Chan or Zen tradition, or certain aspects, certain styles of like the Thai forest tradition, all these would sometimes talk about mind and the centrality of mind and the nature of mind in such a way that if you're not careful, you might end up, kind of basically using a different word to relate to what in say other spiritual tradition would call the self, the soul, the divine self, something like that, something that kind of like is ultimately real, can stand in and of itself, no need other factors, so something permanent, something inherently existing. In fact, even just more generally, if you're part of Mahayana system, we have this notion of Buddha nature. So even this Buddha nature, if you're not careful, it can turn into like, the Hindu religion's Atman or self. And sometimes Buddha nature texts can sound like that, So it's really important to understand what Shantideva is cautioning us against here, which is don't relate to this thing that the Chittamatra system calls mind in such a way that it becomes now a new basis for grasping. No matter how subtle this grasping, as long as there is still grasping, then there is no true freedom. So, in other contexts, in other traditions, there were also great masters who saw the potential pitfalls or dangers of relating to Buddha nature, in a non-Buddhist way. So, for example, the founder of one of the main Zen traditions in Japan, the Soto Caodong in Japan, called Soto Zen, the founder, Dogen, he said, so he purposely read this line that is usually read as all beings have Buddha nature, all beings possess Buddha nature, right? This is a very common statement in the Buddha nature teachings. All beings possess Buddha nature, right? So of course, this sentence is translated into classical Chinese, which is what Japanese Buddhists read. When they read the classical text, it's in classical Chinese. But it's translated in such a way that you can read as all beings possess Buddha nature and all beings are Buddha nature. So he reads it as all beings are Buddha nature because he says, if you read it as all beings possess Buddha nature, now you have a subject and an object. So then you have two things now. And as if Buddha nature is something that can be possessed, that can be owned. Then he goes on to say, so first, all beings are Buddha nature. Then he says, Buddha nature is impermanence. Buddha nature is impermanence. Now, of course, many Mahayana, his fellow Mahayana people, objected to that and say, oh, how can you say this? Buddha nature is not impermanent. Buddha nature is beyond permanence and impermanence. But he knew exactly the reason. It's because people have become attached to, people are grasping at Buddha nature as if, it is something that exists in and of itself and not dependent on other factors. Yes, there is a question, Judy.
I think you just answered it, but if we say that mind influences perception, perception also influences mind. So it's an interdependent thing. There's an interdependence there like everything else. But we can substitute Buddha nature for mind and say Buddha nature influences perception and vice versa. Is that?
Not necessarily. No, don't worry about that.
But mind.
Yeah, first part, yes.
Okay.
Not that mind, okay, not
Okay.
mind influences perception. Perception is mind, right?
Right.
And then what is perceived is dependent on that which is perceiving.
But vice versa?
No.
I mean, input influences.
Yes, in a way, yes.
I mean,
yes.
It's a continuing process of.
Yes.
But then I lose it.
That's okay.
The idea.
Because it's not so important.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the caution is what's important.
The what?
The caution is what's important.
Okay. Okay.
Don't turn this mind into
something.
Into something. Understand that even mind is an interdependent phenomenon.
Right. Well, I think that's what I was trying to say, but my words are not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even mind is an interdependent phenomenon.
Okay.
Yeah, translators, you can just translate the last line. Yeah, so 25, 25 basically is that conclusion. He says, it is not indeed our purpose to disprove experiences of sight or sound or knowing. So we're not, he says, I'm not trying to say, that knowing is not going on. I'm not trying to say, like what you perceive, or whether you perceive with your eye or you perceive with your ears, are not real, or it has no basis at all. He says, I'm not saying that, What I'm doing here, the line 4 is, our aim here is to undermine the cause of suffering, the cause of sorrow. And what is that? Which is the thought that any of these phenomena have true existence. Whether the thinker or what is thought, as long as you think either of these two have true existence, then that can serve as a basis for suffering to arise. That's the key point. So your chapter on wisdom, circle this verse. Yeah, so really this verse 25, is important to highlight. Say this is what it is all about. Yeah. So then, of course, here apparently who he is talking to, who he is debating. I mean, it's not a real debate, right? I mean, it's just him. He gets to say things they don't get to really say. He says it on their behalf, right? So he says so then for him to further go to make this point, he says, you say, that illusions are no different. Here, so I'm reading verse 26, first line. Illusions are not other than the mind. You say that because he is saying, you Chittamatra people say everything is mind. So everything is the illusion. So everything is mind. But yet now when you say the mind is real, then you're saying, mind is real and everything else is unreal. So then line 3, he says, if that's the case, if mind is real, and then what the mind projects out is not real, then these two are different. Then how can you say illusions are the mind, none other than what has arisen from the mind? And then the fourth line, and how can mind be real if you already say that mind and what it perceives and what it perceives, if you say what it perceives is unreal, then the perceiving also needs to be unreal. On this 26. So this is, again, without trying too hard to think about it, take it as like instructions for our meditation. When we feel, like, oh, everything is illusion, don't forget to include everything, including the perceiving, the one who came up with this conclusion. Everything is illusion. You need to apply it to that as well. Is what, to me, is what 26 is saying. So one good example, like how this fault also exists on another level, which is to say, oh, everything is not real, it's illusion. So we say, oh yes, everything is just illusion. But then somehow, but I am real, So this is in This fault, you can see it also, this misunderstanding exists, when certain kinds of like modern secular, like Western secular readings, understanding of Buddhist teachings, they will say, see, gods are not real, demons are not real, rebirth is not real, karma is not real, and they can quote, from the different Buddhist sutras, oh, Buddha said already, gods are not real, demons are not real, rebirth in this realm is not real, that is not real. But then this secular view, but this is real. They say, oh, hell realm, oh, that's just a metaphor, it's not real. I already see in the text it says it's hell beings, hell realm is not real, hungry ghost realm is not real. Oh, but this is real. Oh, my pet is real. Oh, Buddha, no, Buddha says, if you are going to say unreal, then everything is unreal, including the one going about saying, oh, this is not real, this is not real, this is not real, this is not real. So 27, Shantideva says, just like a mirage, even though it is not real, it can be seen. And therefore, that which is seeing the mirage has capacity to see, but it need not be real. Here, real means it is not something that exists in and of itself, but rather it is something that arises interdependently. First two lines of 27. Then Shantideva says, but you will keep insisting, but samsara, surely samsara must be based on something real, or else it is just like empty space. Meaning, right? So yes, empty space is often used as an analogy for like the uncompounded nature of mind, right? For example, is often compared to empty space. But then, in general Buddhist teachings, we also say, however, the difference between, say, the emptiness of a chair or a table and the emptiness of Hun here is that here there is this added quality of knowing, whereas a table equally empty, but it doesn't have a capacity to know. Yeah. So this is Shantideva raising on behalf of the Chittamatra people to say, so this knowing, this quality of knowing, that has to be real. But Shantideva says, no, that doesn't need to be real. It can be effective, as in it can have a function without needing to be real. So the second part of 28 and the entire verse of 29, there we can understand that section as Shantideva saying to the Chittamatra, like one of the problems with you guys thinking that what the mind perceives is not real, but the mind itself is real, is that then this mind that can stand on itself and stand alone, now, in fact, if that's the case, then there is nothing that we can do about this problem of samsara that we have, or nothing necessary to be done about it, because the mind is already real. So that means it's like saying, well, the implication here is there is no problem. Again, sometimes, as I said, these higher teachings, so-called higher teachings, yes, of course they are higher teachings, but we can easily misunderstand, because the language of some of these higher teachings, and say, oh, there's nothing to achieve, nothing to improve, everything is perfect, Buddha nature, everything is Buddha nature is perfect, there's nothing else to do, then stuck in samsara, experiencing suffering of samsara, and walk around repeating like a mantra to numb yourself and say, oh, everything is fine, everything is perfect, everything is fine. That's not going to solve your problems. So then he says, why even, why cling to this, oh, mind is real, only mind, It's not helpful to fixate on this. This otherwise, this meaning this kind of emphasis on mind is no use to fixate on that. Otherwise, if we know how to relate to the teachings of Chittamatra, they can be tremendously helpful. So Shantideva is not condemning it as wrong view. He's just saying there are problems if you don't know how to relate properly to these teachings about the mind and the centrality of mind when it comes to uprooting confusion, dispelling confusion, destroying the three poisons. Yes, we focus on the mind, but don't fixate on it as real. Again, I want to use one example from a slightly different tradition. Again, in the history of the Chan or Zen tradition in East Asia. So there is a very famous text for the Chan Zen tradition, which is called the platform or the Mandala Sutra, platform or Mandala Sutra of the sixth patriarch of the Zen tradition, the sixth lineage holder of the Zen tradition, of the Chan tradition. So in there, there's one famous four-line verse, which is said to demonstrate, right, the supreme understanding of the sixth patriarch. This is at the point where the fifth patriarch is looking for a qualified successor. So then he asks his disciples to demonstrate their understanding by writing a few words about it. So famously, these 4 lines, it's like this. That supposedly the 6th patriarch wrote is Bodhi originally, or you can say originally, you can say basically, doesn't have a tree. So this is based on the idea that, or what we commonly say, the Bodhi tree. Okay? So Bodhi, enlightenment, doesn't have a tree, meaning it's not dependent on a tree. And also analogy, body, not dependent on. Then second line is neither is the mirror, neither does the mirror have a stand. So that's the second line. So mirror is analogy for mind. Mind doesn't have a stand, doesn't have a basis. And the third line is if originally, if innately, there is not a single thing, then where can dust settle on what? The fourth line. Where can dust settle on what? So this is his famous 4 lines. There's a little bit more that I'm going to explain why I'm giving you this example. So, as it turned out, there is an old text found in Dunhuang, a slightly shorter version of what is now known as the Platform Sutra. In fact, the earliest version that we have. In the earliest version that we have, that was circulating, the third line is different from what is circulating now. The third line that is circulating now is, if fundamentally or originally not a single thing exists, that line. The earlier version has a completely different words, which is Buddha nature is originally pure and stainless, for the third line. Buddha nature is originally pure and stainless. 佛性本清净 in Chinese for waiting. So in this earliest version that they found, the third line is different from what we now know as the third line. What we now know as the third line is originally or fundamentally not a single thing exists. Yeah, so the difference between, saying Buddha nature is originally pure and stainless, and then later changed to fundamentally not a single thing exists. Here, it shows us, that at some point, right, the tradition understands or feels that that line, Buddha nature, is originally pure and stainless. That line can lead to this misunderstanding that, well, there's nothing to do. Everything is pure. Everything is fine. So a more middle way, a more Shantideva Nagarjuna's way of speaking, right, is substituted for the third line, which is fundamentally not a single thing exists, meaning not a single thing exists independently. Everything exists interdependently. Therefore, so the last line, therefore, where can there be any dust, as in, where can there be any real dust if there is no real surface? This dust and surface is talking about mirror and dust or stains on the mirror. And this analogy makes a lot more sense if we try to remember our modern mirror is a very modern creation. In the ancient times, mirror is just a metal surface that you have to keep polishing. So if that which you are polishing, the metal surface, don't exist independent of what you're polishing, is the analogy, but it's really pointing to mind and what the mind perceives are interdependent. If one is not real, the other one is necessarily not real. So apologies to our hardworking translators. This is complicated stuff. Then even more challenging, when I'm not so good at making it clearer. Instead, bringing in even more stuff from other places to even make it more confusing. So anyway, so in the Shantideva, Nagarjuna, the middleweight style, prefer then to use the expression illusion. And remember last time when we met, we say, illusion. What is illusion? If we update that expression, we can say, or sometimes illusion also they say like a dream. So if we update it to now, to our more modern experience, we can say it's like a movie, It's like a movie. Life is like a movie. Life is like a dream. Life is like a movie. So, or it's like a movie, as in it's like the experiences that arises when we watch a good movie. It's like those experiences are exactly what we call unreal. And those feelings or experiences that arises, they arise in relation to this movie, which is unreal also. But nonetheless, they illusorily exist. So then in verse 30, Shantideva again has the opponent raising this issue and say, so if you say everything is like illusion, will that be sufficient to dispel suffering and the causes of suffering? Will that do the job that you say needs to be done, which is to dispel suffering and the causes of suffering? He says, okay, you don't want us to talk about mind only. What about your favorite topic, illusion? He says, talking like that, is that going to solve the problem? So now let's take a quick break, and then we will continue.
Om Wage Jware Mum Wage Jware Mum 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 Om Wage wage jware mum 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 wage jware 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 wage jware.
So then here in verse 30, Shantideva uses a very interesting kind of scenario. So line 3 and 4 of verse 30. So Shantideva says, yes, a good question. He says, knowing that this is an illusion, would it necessarily dispel, do away with the afflictive emotions? So he says, yeah, it's like magicians may indeed themselves desire the mirage women they themselves create. Shantideva says, yes, it's kind of, even when magicians, by the power of illusion, created these women, beautiful women, they can still have desire. Says, yeah, that so simply because it's an illusion doesn't take care of the problem. Shantideva says, exactly. And so here Shantideva is saying, your point, the way you put it, is exactly what we are also saying. Yes, so Shantideva will say, indeed, the, our point, the Buddha's point, because the middle way is said to be the Buddha's most profound instructions, the closest to showing us the nature of reality. And there, to say that everything exists in an illusory manner, like an illusion, that's just the starting point. So first, you need to understand it this way. And then what is the problem? Problem is we have not habituated this understanding. And therefore, the practice is the practice of again and again and again and again, habituating this understanding that everything is illusory. So it's like, even though we know, oh, this is just a movie, but because of our habit of being kind of, you could say, addicted to the emotions a particular movie stir up, whether it's anger, whether it's lust, even though we know the characters are not real, they are just, pretending, but we become so addicted that we sort of live in the movie. And we even begin to measure our kind of non-movie reality against the movie reality and say, oh, how come it cannot be like that? Oh, if only it is like that, like the movie. So this is because, it's just a movie. It's just an illusion. But we, so 31, very clear stanza. It says, so I'm going to read 31. The reason is they have not rid themselves of habits of desiring objects of perception. And when they gaze upon such things, their aptitude for emptiness is weak indeed. So their understanding of emptiness, their understanding of illusory nature becomes very weak. Because why? Because the habit of being addicted to the movie, to the illusion, dominates. And 32 goes on to 32 goes on to say, by training in this aptitude for emptiness. So then, instead of, so we are either training in being addicted to the illusory experiences, or we can train to recognize illusory as illusory, which is this aptitude for emptiness. By training in this aptitude for emptiness, then the habit to perceive real things, to perceive things as real, to perceive things as ultimately existing, to perceive things in a solid way, to perceive things in a non-illusory way, will be relinquished. By training in the thought, I'm reading now line 3 of 32, by training in the thought, there isn't anything. So just like that Zen statement, fundamentally, there isn't a single thing. And so here, by training in the thought, there isn't anything, this view itself will also be abandoned. So here, Shantideva says, then not only do we have to train, this is illusory, to train to see the illusory nature rather than to get addicted to illusory experiences. But our training has to be such that even this view that there is nothing, even that will eventually need to be also relinquished. Yes. So the analogy of this, even the view that there isn't anything, right? Even that, which is the antidote to being addicted to the illusory things. The antidote to being addicted to illusory things, illusory experiences, even that antidote, when the poison of the illusion is done with, then the antidote is also done with. So the analogy is found in the Pure Land tradition in China. One of the lineage masters, the early lineage master, Shantideva, he said, the Pure Land is like a block of ice. When you throw this block of ice into a fire, it will extinguish the fire, and the fire will consume the ice, and both cease to exist. Then done. The work is complete. He puts it that way. I think it's Shantideva. I forgot. One of these lineage masters. So then, 33, there is nothing. When this is asserted, no thing is there to be examined. How can nothing, wholly unsupported, rest before the mind as something present? Okay, what this stanza is basically saying, don't turn the cure, the antidote to poison, into a new poison. And so then using the analogy of the block of ice, if the block of ice that puts out the fire now starts a flood, then we are in another problem. And in fact, what Shantideva is saying is that when this view of there is not a single thing, there is no thing, there is no real, things are not real, they are only illusory. If you apply this in the right way, then there can be no basis of grasping onto that at all. So in 34, this is another famous verse, 34, when something and its non-existence, which is what emptiness is about. The teaching on emptiness is basically it's not, the teaching on emptiness is not saying emptiness is real, emptiness is real. Again, even in the emptiness tradition, some people relate to emptiness as, oh, emptiness is real. But no, the teaching on emptiness is to help us see something and its non-existence. When both of these, on 34, are absent from before the mind, from our understanding, if from our understanding we know that something and its absence are both interdependent and therefore they are equally not real, then no other option does the latter have. It comes to perfect rest from concepts free, meaning the heart, the mind have no other place to be except in the place of rest and free from concepts. So this this stanza 34. It is said in the story about Shantideva. I don't know if you remember. Yeah, I told this right at the beginning in class number 1. Now it's class 62. You know, it said that Shantideva's fellow students wanted to embarrass him. And so say starting from tomorrow every day we will ask somebody in our group to give a teaching to show what they have learned because they all suspected that Shantideva has not learned anything. So then on this one day they arrange a seat, a teaching seat that is very high, and then on that day they say to Shantideva, okay, today you should teach. So then it is said that, then obviously, or they expected that Shantideva wasn't going to be able to get onto this seat that is really high. Like it's just basically the seat is so high, unless you have a ladder, you can't go up. And there wasn't one. So it is said that Shantideva sat on the floor, I think. Then he started to, on the spot, teach this text that we've been studying. Then it is said that as he's teaching this, he begins to levitate. And levitate, and levitate, and levitate, and levitate, and levitate, and levitate, okay? So at some point, of course, he reached the level where the seat is, but he continued to levitate, it is said, until this verse on 34. So Shantideva is not, opposed to using special effects to enhance his teachings, which is at this point, it is said. So the whole time, right? Not only was he giving this wonderful, amazing teachings, he's also wowing everyone in the audience, probably getting very distracted because he is levitating. But at this point, according to the story, according to tradition, by 34, he completely disappeared from view. So imagine how dramatic this is, because 34 says, when something and its non-existence, so like himself, and his non-existence both are absent from before the mind, no other option does the latter have, does the mind have. It comes to perfect rest, free from all concepts. Then poof, he disappeared. But they could still hear him. It is said that the rest of this text, they couldn't see him, but they could hear his voice teaching. So when we understand that both the illusions, when we fully understand, when we fully realize both illusion and the emptiness of illusion, that even those two. So when he was directly responding to Chittamatra, he is saying mind, right? And the illusion projected by mind, which is what mind perceives, both are equally unreal, right? So now he's applying this same principle to the issue of illusion, which is the middle way school's preferred expression of what is the nature of reality. In the Chittamatra system, the nature of reality is expressed using mind. And mind is real, but what the mind perceives is unreal. At least the emphasis is in that direction. So there, Shantideva criticizes that or points out the dangers of that. That then you might start to think mind is real, right? So then here, without being invited, so to say, without being challenged, Shantideva immediately also said, shows how even that principle equally applies to the middle way school's favorite expression, illusion. So here, so then, so here, when something, that illusory something, and its non-existence, meaning the ability to see its non-existence, when these two both, when you understand that even they are interdependent phenomena, then now completely all the mental afflictions that gave rise to samsara, they can all subside now. Now mind is truly free. Perfect rest. No more stress, no more suffering. Then the next three verses is to emphasize that. So when this ultimate kind of rest, meaning liberation, complete liberation, is achieved, it's not like a blank, a state of blankness, but rather when that happens, then 35, 36, 37 is talking about how from that awakened state, Buddhas now spontaneously, effortlessly manifest in whatever forms, whatever experiences that is necessary to help liberate beings from their confusion. And that's 35, 36, 37. Yes, so this state of being awakened is not a mere blank. As much as we talk about, both illusion and its emptiness are now gone. You should not think of it as this our normal way of thinking of, oh, subject object gone, then nothing exists there anymore. No, the power of the aspirations while on the Bodhisattva grounds, those aspirations to benefit beings, those aspirations now turn into reality. So Buddhas don't exist the way we think things exist, which is exist in a subject-object way. And Buddhas also don't exist as like standing alone either. Buddhas exist in a way that is inconceivable to us, but through the power of the aspirations while they are still on the Bodhisattva ground, that power will continue without end, with no end, because the very essence of the Buddha state is benefiting beings, which is bodhicitta. In fact, in Kyopa Jigten Sungman, founder of Drivun Kagyu, he even goes to the point of saying that both aspiration and engagement bodhicitta, meaning relative bodhicitta, continue to exist when someone has achieved Buddhahood. So this might sound a little bit strange, so to some people. They say, what? The aspiration still exist? Why do you need the aspiration? They've already arrived, Then he says, the explanation is like, no, this aspiration is not just a means to an end. In fact, this aspiration is pointing to how, in the Buddha state, the aspiration or the desire to help beings is perpetual, is unending, is natural. Right now, when we're not yet Buddhists, when we have not realized the Buddha state, we have to artificially aspire. Oh, may I benefit beings, may I benefit beings, may I benefit beings. When we are Buddhists, may I benefit beings is no longer necessary to be artificially produced, artificially reinforced, and artificially achieved. It's naturally, spontaneously, naturally. May I benefit beings, may I benefit beings. Yes, so today we're going to stop here, but I want to see if there are any questions or comments. In the next section, just so you know, now Shantideva raises some objections that comes from the direction of the so-called Hinayana positions. Yeah? So you can see that this text, it's not at all, what you expect a philosophical composition to be, right? As I said, if I was grading Shantideva as a, professor, and grading this as a philosophical text, I would fail him and say, you're all over the place, all over the map. Suddenly you're talking about this, suddenly you're talking about that. But of course, Shantideva wasn't composing a philosophical text. It's just that later generations, with all their scholastic, very sophisticated, educated mode, have read chapter 9 in such sophistication, But for Shantideva himself, he was just spontaneously, extemporaneously, talking to his fellow students, addressing points of debate that they were debating in the philosophy class that they probably were attending, right? Earlier or later or last week or last year. And he knows that these are the topics that people are talking, people are discussing. And so he just extemporaneously, in a poetic way, is addressing all these things. Yes, Linda.
So, in a sense, this verse 34 pointing at Buddha nature, and then 35, 36, 37 is describing the qualities of Buddha nature without having to attach
Not Buddha nature, the Buddha state.
Buddha state. Okay.
The state of being Buddha. 35, 36, 37.
Mhm.
In fact, you can say 35, right? It's talking about the nirmanakayas of the Buddhas. The fourth line in 35. The physical appearance of the conquerors occurs. The nirmanakayas manifesting. So no, it's not 35, 36, 37. It's all talking about, you know, the natural Buddha activities from this Buddha state. When we use the vocabulary Buddha nature, that it pertains to the basis, not the result, not the fruit.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. So we will end as usual. With our dedication at the end. By the way, I just got news that one of Dharma friends, who usually, whenever she can, would join us. She's been having a lot of health issues. She choose what, those of you who know her, choose what. Some of you travel with her in the travels that I've done in the past. That she has just passed away. So as we do dedication, please think of her and dedicate and merit to her swift passage through the Bardo, achieve Amitabha's pure land. So for those of you who know the Amitabha aspiration, the short Amitabha pure land aspiration, I will chant that first, and followed by the Bodhicitta. Sa sanje na wa tha ye na yesu jo wo tu je chen bo na yong du se pa tu che to na ma sanje chang sen pa me ko ki ko ye ki ngo sa pak tu me pa ye de wa chen se sha we shin kan de da shin din ne se po gyur ma ta ke wa sanje par ma chung Erugene nante shelton shu deke dagi malam tapari Chuchu sanje chansen tamche ge gene rupa jije lantu so Deya da penza driya awa buddha naya so chanchu sem cho vendo Age Okay, so in terms of this class, we will meet this coming Tuesday. But next Saturday, we will not meet. But this coming Tuesday, we will meet. Please take note of the time. Daylight savings have started in the US. So US time is we start daily, not daily, but each time when we have class, US time. It's New York time, 8 in the morning, which I know in Guatemala is 6 in the morning. And then in Mexico right now it's also 6 in the morning. In maybe a month or in a few weeks, Mexico will be 7 in the morning. But right now it's also 6. So yay, we all get to wake up early. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Yeah.
Gracias,
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
Lai.
Lai.
Bye.